Behold, the Nova Crown. The words echoed inside the jet, hurtling through the sky at Mach 3. Inside, 3 people sat, 2 men and 1 woman. The woman appeared to be in her early 30s, her lush green hair flowing over an official female office outfit. A tablet rested in her hands, her gaze calm and confident. Beside her sat a man, likely in his late 20s, dressed in the same official attire but wearing spectacles. His feet tapped impatiently on the floor, excitement barely contained. He was the one who had first spoken. The third man, Ryuk, turned toward the man gazing out the window with wide-eyed disbelief. Curious, he leaned forward as well, until the sight outside captured his full attention. There it was, a solitary island surrounded by soft blue waters and patches of living green. At its heart stood a building unlike any other he had ever seen. Or rather, his building. "It looks alive," Ryuk murmured, almost unconsciously, as he stared at his new home. Its walls curved in smooth arcs of polished white, more organic than manufactured. A soft blue light pulsed beneath the edges, casting a glowing cyan glow that mirrored the lines of 2 ultra-high-performance cars parked neatly inside the garage below. The upper floor jutted outward like the open maw of a magnificent beast, elegant, imposing, and awe-inspiring. Inside, soft lighting brushed across the glass, casting shadows that Ryuk could already see himself reflected in. The metal image of a man standing on the curved balcony at the top, wind brushing his face as he overlooked the entire island. "Nova Crown." The woman's voice rang out as the spaceship neared the island, arriving about 100 meters before the building and then halting, hovering in place. "To be honest, sir, this is the finest building ever completed by our Nova Haven group," she said, her tone warm but professional. "It has been ranked among the 12 most futuristic buildings on all of Endearth." "How do you like the exterior?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with pride. Ryuk's gaze traveled along the pebble pathway leading to the building. On both sides, flowing channels of blue water were covered by nearly invisible floor glasses with blue lightning crackling along their length, guiding the way to the garage. His eyes narrowed on the 2 hypercars inside. One a sleek 2-seater, the other a 4-seat SUV. "Has anyone lived here before? And what about the cars?" Ryuk asked, curiosity creeping into his voice. The woman smiled knowingly. "It seems you didn't fully explore the building's extra features before choosing it." Ryuk shook his head. "No, I was simply drawn to its structure and its seclusion. To answer your question, no one has ever lived here. It was completed just a month ago. Also, the building is self-sustaining, maintaining itself without any need for human cleaning or upkeep. So you, sir, will be the first to call this place home." "And the cars?" "They're extras, features designed to complement the building. There are 2 in total." She pointed to the futuristic 2-door car, its color shifting fluidly every 10 seconds. "That one is the Velocinova hypercar. It has 100 billion horsepower and can reach speeds of Mach 100 at full power. You don't need to worry about refueling. It runs on a 6-gigawatt rechargeable energy core that draws natural mana from the air. With the current mana reserves, it can drive at full power nonstop for about 3 years before needing a recharge. This car is one of only 5 in the entire world. And with the push of a button, it can even hover and move on water." Ryuk nodded slowly. "Looks like you considered that it's on an island surrounded by water." The woman chuckled. "It would have been ironic if the island were surrounded by water and the car couldn't move on it." She gestured toward the other car. "That one is the Navigini Urus, a 70 billion horsepower 4-seater. Perfect for family trips or long journeys. It can reach Mach 60 at full power. Like the Velocinova, it runs on a rechargeable mana battery, 4 gigawatts. So maintenance costs are minimal. Though to drive either, you'll need a proper license. You should contact your organization to arrange it. They'll sort everything out." "That's cool," Ryuk said, feeling a growing thrill. "Yes, but you know what's cooler?" the man with glasses said, stepping forward and handing Ryuk a small blue device resembling a key. "It's key?" Ryuk asked, curiosity piqued. The man shook his head before he cajoled for Ryuk to push the button. Ryuk's fingers brushed over it, and when he clicked, a subtle disturbance rippled through the air above the building. A fracture appeared in the sky about 100 meters above the structure, and something shot out, an object that made Ryuk's jaw drop to the ground. This was something he would never have believed if he had been told. In fact, he would have believed he was being scammed instead. "Is that one of the house's features?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes," the woman said, smiling as a sleek jet descended gracefully toward the ground, its blue energy glowing softly. It stopped, landing precisely in front of Ryuk. "This is the Nova Eclipse Star Jet, one of only 3 in all of Endearth. It's the 32nd fastest civilian jet on the planet right now." Ryuk exhaled slowly. "I thought I was only buying a house. Now I feel like I'm at a car and jet dealership." He chuckled quietly to himself as the woman gave a quick tour of the house's features. The place was more than convincing, beyond anything he had imagined. Finally, after making the last payment, the 2 Nova Haven officials bid him goodbye and left the island. Now, only Ryuk remained, standing before an ultra-luxurious mega-building. His new home, not given to him as a handout or gift, but bought with his blood and sweat. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Finally, activate Techno Void Ruin. The words rang out through the calm breeze, and a gigantic portal immediately appeared, spinning in the air before luminous figures descended from it. They continued for about 3 seconds, reaching 200, well arranged on the grassland with the vortex spinning in the air around them. The curved moonlight in the sky, along with the green-blue auroras, revealed their glitching energy forms slowly beginning to solidify. Soon, they became real constructs, seemingly all dressed in the most advanced cyber bodies, all facing a mega building. At the top, on the balcony of this mega building, hands resting on the guarding rail, was a white-haired individual dressed in a casual outfit of a white shirt and trousers. His clothes flapped wildly as his icy blue gaze locked onto the lined-up army before him. It was none other than Ryuk, whose piercing stare assessed the aura of each member of his techno army. The power in the air grew even stronger, though it hadn't reached a qualitative change yet. "Hey, system," Ryuk called out as the golden panel notification flashed before him. "I've gotten the nanocore reactor, which is one of the objects required to level up the Techno Void Ruin. You said you would only reveal the other after I got this. What's the second?" Ryuk asked, and immediately the panel changed. "System Protocol, Mass Ascension Drive, MAD Protocol. Requirements for activation. Nanocore reactor. A legendary energy source, the Sovereign must find or forge, capable of outputting enough quantum pulses to rewire all constructs at once. Status. Obtained. Quantum synchronization beacon, crafted within the Reforge. Requires 2 materials, namely, a dormant hyper-grade mother box, a descent column. Synchronizes all constructs to the Forge's AI, allowing simultaneous evolution." So I need a dormant hyper-grade mother box and a descent column? Never heard of them before. Ryuk mused as the system flashed. "Don't worry, host. They're now both available in the shop. But their price is quite outrageous." Ryuk asked, "What are the prices of both objects?" "The dormant hyper-grade mother artifact the shop possesses is a very, very high-grade one. A lower tier one should be enough, but we don't have that in stock. The price alone is 350,000 purchase points. As for the descent column, it's going for 200,000 purchase points. That makes a total of 550,000 purchase points." Ryuk's pupils dilated at the price. Even the cultivation manuals were all less than 80,000 purchase points, and just 2 artifacts were costing so much. "And how many purchase points do I have again? I think I've amassed quite a few with that past quest I completed," Ryuk muttered as the system flashed once more. "Yes, you have. The total purchase points you have now is exactly 570000. If you choose to buy the 2 artifacts, you will only have 20,000 purchase points left." "Tisk! No way in hell," Ryuk muttered under his breath, trying to think of other options. So where exactly can I come upon these objects? Assuming I don't use the shop? It would have to be a fortuitous encounter, in places like ruins or interdimensional gates. But the gates that drop such quality of artifacts will be far beyond what an entity stage should be able to handle. The chances of the drop being exactly what you want are also just about 20%. So it's all about how good your luck is. However, even with great luck, you'd likely need to be at more than the Eternity Power level before you can get them. In short, those two objects aren't something your current level should be able to get their hands on. Ryuk's gaze dulled with disappointment. If the system says he only has a 20% chance of getting something, chances were, it would take hundreds of years for him to find them, if he ever did. Seems like I have no choice. Isha is evolving right now, and Void is also evolving too. There won't be any battle happening for some time now, so I won't exactly be needing to quickly get anything else from the shop. So I guess it would be fine. Before I need something once more, I'll try to close more gates and gather more purchase points. Ryuk mused to himself before he finally ordered. Exchange 550000 points for both objects. Congratulations, host has successfully purchased a dormant hyper-grade mother artifact and a descent column, totaling a price of 550,000 purchase points. Purchase points remaining 20,000. The system flashed as Ryuk felt a painful pang in his heart. 550,000 purchase points, gone like that. Those things cost me blood and pain to earn, and poof, in a second. His greedy heart couldn't accept it, but what choice did he have, other than to stand, looking at the sky helplessly for 30 minutes, grinding and biting his teeth before finally swallowing it down in the end? Well, on the positive side, I have these, he said, hands outstretched, and two objects immediately appeared in his palm. One was a rectangular box, completely covered in various runic symbols, as big as his head. The other was a simple gem-like object, small enough to be contained in his palm. So, these two things would have to be crafted in the Reforge? Huh? And where's the Reforge? He asked as the system panel blinked. The Reforge is the Techno-Void ruin itself. You only need to place these two objects side by side with the nanocore reactor, and it will do the rest, automatically leveling up the techno-constructs. Although, you must remember, they will not be active for an entire day. The system said as Ryuk stepped away from the balcony, floating in the air while descending down towards the army below, who were all sent back into the vortex, and Ryuk followed after. Opening his gaze to the sight of the broken dimension that held the floating remains of ancient civilization. I won't be needing the techno army for 24 hours, so it's fine, he said, and with a slight will, the nanocore reactor he had left inside the techno-void ruin instantly appeared before him, and Ryuk watched as the objects in his hands were magnetized toward it, lifting away from Ryuk's palm. They quickly began spinning, and soon enough, they combined as one, sending a powerful ripple of quantum energy through the surroundings. Get out of the techno-void ruin. It will mutate the techno-soldiers into more powerful constructs, but to you there's a 95% chance it will make you sick and weak instead. The system flashed as Ryuk immediately phased away from the techno-void ruin, and seconds later, the light burst forth with even more power, roaring toward the floating constructs as various lights began oozing out from them, the sound of technological whirring filling the air. So, the techno-void ruin is being leveled up. Isha and Void are also evolving. Ryuk muttered. Yeah. Your strength is being increased too. The system said as Ryuk nodded, landing back on the balcony as the glass door automatically slid open, and he continued inside. But now, there's just one more thing I need to do. What's that? My cultivation. My frost and void cultivation. They've been stuck in the same place for a while now. My frost cultivation requires me to comprehend the runes on each frost apex energy, and my void one just needs more time. And pain, of course, Ryuk said as a chill ran up his spine. His void cultivation brought with it monumental pain. Some of the worst he had ever experienced in his pain-filled life. Yes, but your frost cultivation will take more than a few days to see results. You will need weeks at least before you comprehend those runes. Don't you have to be with Aster next tomorrow? The system asked. Ryuk nodded. Correct. And I don't want to accidentally fall into slumber for 3 weeks and miss that. So I won't be starting the frost cultivation. That leaves just the void cultivation, Ryuk said. As his hand reached forward, a void rift opening right before him. He stepped toward it, a thought flashing in his mind. I wonder what Antares is doing in there. He seems to like hanging out in there a lot. Ryuk thought to himself, stepping in. In the next instant, he felt the familiar sensation of traveling through a wormhole, only it was quicker this time. As the darkness faded away and he stepped out, his hands thrust outward in a fast snap and then, bang! The end of a hammer smashed straight into Ryuk's palm, a shockwave rippling through the surrounding space from the point of contact. But then, cracks suddenly spread across the massive 2-meter hammer, as Ryuk clenched his finger around it and then, shatter. It burst into pieces along with an enormous backward force, and he watched the figure soar backwards, his gaze sharpening on the bizarre form. Ryuk slowly lowered his hands, eyes scanning the area as his expression shifted into a deep frown. And what the hell is going on here? Clang. The sounds of weapons clashing echoed loudly as Ryuk looked on to the side, finding a total of 4 figures locked in an intense battle. Swords, spears, and an axe collided with fierce force as one figure was repeatedly sent flying backward, the very ground exploding with each clash. He fought with everything he had, barely managing to match the overwhelming power, exhaling heavily with every strike. And he was none other than Antares. Ryuk's gaze sharpened with concern as he watched him get tossed around the battlefield. But the ones fighting him, they were beings as thin as skeletons. No actual skeletons, but covered entirely in dark, runic lines that ran across every inch of their bony forms as they slashed at Antares with incredibly sharp weapons. Around the battle scene, several broken skeletons lay scattered, revealing that Antares had destroyed at least a couple of them. But then Ryuk didn't understand. Just where did the skeletons come from? He asked, turning his gaze away from the battle and scanning the area. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. Around the platform where he had previously undergone his cultivation, there were those bizarre graves, the same ones that had once shocked his hand with a weird current when he had tried to open them. He had eventually left them alone. But now, about 7 of those graves had been opened, their contents emptied, and when Ryuk looked at the skeletal figures attacking Antares, it was easy to tell the connection. Vroom! The void rippled as Ryuk turned his gaze to the side, watching as Antares appeared by his side, crouching on the ground as he exhaled puffy white smoke from both nose and lips. Hey, Ryuk. Thank the devil you're here. I've been trying to reach you for years now, Antares said, heaving like a madman as Ryuk shook his head. Immediately, the skeletal figures appeared before them, all 3 slashing out with their weapons toward the 2. But then, Antares felt his spear, which he had been ripped off the hands of one of the skeletons, suddenly disappear and then, clang! The spear slashed forward toward the void with power, and when it collided with the 3 approaching weapons, they were sent flying backward over 20 meters before skidding to a stop. Antares' eyes widened in disbelief. If I remember correctly, Antares, I told you not to touch anything. But you didn't just touch the graves. You opened 4 of them, Ryuk said, dodging to the side as a black axe cleaved toward his neck, but it struck only an afterimage. Ryuk reappeared behind the skeleton that attacked him, his spear slashing downward and cleaving it into 2 halves. Vroom! The end of a staff slammed downward toward his chest, but Ryuk withdrew the spear with speed, clashing it against the staff and sending it flying out of the skeletal figure's hands back before he moved again. His spear pierced through the ribs of the one who had attacked him before. He raised it up and placed it behind him like a meat shield. Immediately, boom! The entire void shook as a massive dark club blasted toward Ryuk's back, only to slam into the skeletal figure he had just impaled, shattering it into pieces. Ryuk spun around, raising his spear and sending it piercing outward toward the skeletal figure's eyes before jerking it upward and shattering the skull into bits. The 3 bodies were instantly dismembered, floating in space as if lifeless, but it was hard to tell. After all, they had literally risen from graves just moments ago. He slowly backed toward Antares as he watched the spear he held begin cracking, unable to handle the pressure before it broke into small parts, drifting into the void. That was fast. You've reached eternity, too, Antares asked in surprise, but when he turned to look at Ryuk, who was walking toward him with a cold, unreadable gaze, he could only sigh nervously. My curiosity got the better of me. Don't do that next time, Ryuk said as he floated back to the remains of the skeletons. Ha! The confused sound left Antares' lips as he watched Ryuk begin gathering fragments from the destroyed skeletal remains. He then walked toward the graves and buried each item back where it was. Then, with a subtle motion, he sealed the gates shut. What are you doing? Antares asked. After catching his breath, he appeared behind Ryuk, who had just shut the last grave after returning all that was missing. Returning things to what they were? Ryuk replied with a hint of nonchalance, as Antares glanced at the graves before he simply shrugged. You know, those graves I opened were the ones I sensed were the weakest. And would you believe they're at the eternity stage and they're not even the strongest of the bunch. So, it means there are truly those stronger than eternity, and they're not just one. Maybe a dozen is just the starting point. How did you even get your hands on this thing? The graves of so many strong experts? He asked, as Ryuk's brows furrowed, but Antares turned away. And there, he suddenly said, pointing into the deep darkness of the void. I can sense something horrifying from that place. Chills me to the bones. When I try to get close, my legs twitch from fear, unconsciously. And just to let you know, the times I've been afraid in my life, I can count them on one hand. This place is highly abnormal, and this grave point is like the only safe zone. If you turn away and go deeper, there are much, much worse things. And with dangers, of course, come opportunities. Have you ever thought of walking around and seeing things for yourself? And if you're lucky enough, getting your hands on a treasure, maybe a weapon, Antares asked, as Ryuk shrugged his shoulders. When I had it, I was very weak. Even touching the graves shocked me badly, and I just ignored them. If things are much worse like you said, then I'd probably die if I leave here. So, I haven't gone away from this place. And whatever this place is, I don't have no idea. It was an artifact I found that gave me this part of a reward. And it's not really mine, nor is it lost to me. Nor do I have a map of everywhere burned into my head. I don't know anything. And my advice to you is just leave things alone as they are, or risk the chance of death if you venture around. I don't know, you might find something good, Ryuk said with a shrug, as he floated back to the platform where he had last used to cultivate it. Antares would always want answers to what this space was, believing that since Ryuk had access to it, he must know a lot about it. He must be the master, so he outright just told him the truth. And truly, Ryuk had no idea what was out there. He only ever stayed in this grave region because it was what he needed for his void cultivation's first level. Anything else, any other zones, he hadn't reached that level, so no need to wander around. If Antares wanted to wander and go look for opportunities, Ryuk wouldn't stop him. Just warn him that he could very well die, and that he wouldn't care less. He already warned him anyway. TSK, not even a bit adventurous, Antares said, trying to strike a chord, but he only watched as the young man sat down on the platform. What are you doing? Hey, Antares, what's the most concentrated energy here? Ryuk asked back as Antares answered. Void energy. It's literally everywhere. Correct. So, isn't this the best place to cultivate void energy, he asked, as Antares nodded his head. I guess you're right. You're a dual elementalist. Those are rare, Antares said. He had seen Ryuk pull off those void-based abilities during their battle, and he had also watched him use his ice. And of course, those were special elementalists, those who could use an element only to have it possess another special effect. But looking at Ryuk, who seemed to want to cultivate just void energy as a separate force, that was a sign of a dual elementalist. Good. It's all clear now, Ryuk said before he balanced his breath, entering into a quiet state before closing his eyes. Hey system, please keep count of the time. Once it's exactly 30 hours, then alert me to go out, Ryuk said inwardly. No problem, the system replied. And finally, his last worries faded away as he was about to review the information of the void aura grimoire in his head to make sure he knew what he was going to do next. When the voice came in. Hey! It was Antares, and Ryuk groaned in exasperation. I'm trying to cultivate. I know. But do you know that a cultivator's meditation stage is the easiest time to catch them in a good sneak attack and kill them off with one stroke? My point is, it's your most vulnerable state. You sure you want to go in that state without first checking the surroundings and ensuring everything is, safe? Antares asked, as Ryuk rolled his eyes, sensing what he was concealing under the surface. To be honest, Antares, you're right. Meditating is dangerous because one's consciousness is drowned in blankness and slumber, and it's the best time for a sneak attack to come too. But this isn't my first time cultivating here, and I had been safe. The only difference is, you weren't there the last time. So the only one who can make me unsafe is you giving me a punch right in the head while I'm cultivating, he said, as Antares' brows tightened. And why would I do such a cowardly thing? If I want your ass hooped, I'd wait for you to get out of cultivation and give you a nice whooping, Antares said matter-of-factly as Ryuk chuckled in mockery. You keep talking about getting my ass hooped. You still think you can whoop my ass again? He asked humorously, as Antares laughed out loud. Kid, did you know I am thrice stronger than the first time we met? Ha ha ha, Antares said, laughing boldly at Ryuk, who raised up his head and laughed out loud in mockery too until, he's right, and really it's strange. My scan are showing that his energy wave have somehow risen to 3 times the last time he fought you. The system said, but Ryuk wouldn't fall for that crap. Oh yeah? Then why were you getting pushed around by those skeletons? You were quite on a pretty bad foot when I came in, as if one more second and you'd fall to your death. And those skeletons aren't even that strong. They're like initial stage eternity experts. And you still struggled against just 4 of them. Seems like to me you got weaker compared to the previous you instead. Of course, I'm weak. I'm barely able to use 20% of my full strength, Antares said, mid-exasperation and danger, as Ryuk scoffed. You're not missing an arm or leg. Sounds like an excuse to me, he replied, resulting in the giant clapping his head. You broke my gauntlets and my axe. Those are just extra weapons. They don't count as a factor of power. At least not on the level of 80% of one's true strength. Maybe to you and that weak scythe of yours, duh. I'm an Aetheris barbarian. My full power is capable of being unleashed by me conjoining Aetheris along with runic lines, which are on my gauntlets and my axe. Only by them can I channel my Aetheris energy and use my power. Without them, I'm merely releasing Aetheris energy as a raw force. It's like you throwing out a blast of mana. It doesn't do shit if you don't employ a technique or skill or ability. Antares shot back, as Ryuk's brows furrowed deeply. His words made sense. It was just like Instructor Kiana said. Aetheris energy is weak when it comes to physical power. The only time it's truly powerful is when Aetheris runes are used. The Silverunic are able to call up runes that they've memorized, inscribe them with Aetheris to use their power. For Antares, the runes had already been inscribed onto his gauntlets and dual axe, and he only needed to send Aetheris into them to bring out the full power of his energy. Without runes, an Aetheris cultivator was pretty much useless, just like how a mana cultivator would be useless if they didn't have a battle technique or skill to use their mana. Now it made sense why Antares was weaker than he remembered. Because he didn't have any runic lines to employ his power, since Ryuk had destroyed his axe and gauntlet. He was merely releasing blasts of power. And that was when Ryuk's gaze widened in realization. Even though Antares was merely using blasts of Aetheris, which are pretty much useless in a fight, he somehow was still able to defeat 2 initial stage eternity skeletons and even hold down 4 of the others. At 20% of his power, he could still defeat initial stage eternity experts and hold a small group of them down. Then what would have happened if he had his axe and gauntlets? What would have happened if he had 100% of his full power? he would most likely have skewered through them all with a single attack. Antares is like you, Ryuk, the system suddenly said as Ryuk's expression tensed with focused confusion. Like me? Yes, like you. You're an anomaly amongst Endarthians. The greatest anomaly, probably. Mad White, too, is an anomaly among his human race, mainly because he is also a geneticist cultivator, having been fused with the Titan gene. High Scholar Emrys is an anomaly amongst his race, due to his unique dark Aetherus energy that allows him to weaponize imagination. Just like all of you, Antares is also an anomaly in his own right. I haven't quite figured out what made him abnormal, but if there's any hypothesis I have, it's that Aetherus is similar to you, growing stronger with every scar. Seems like you finally realized, huh? Antares asked with a grin as he looked at Ryuk's shocked expression with amusement. But then, Ryuk's surprise faded away before he inhaled and exhaled slowly. His gaze couldn't help but trail to the scars that covered Antares' body. And now, the thought of those scars not really being scars for the first time echoed out to him. Perhaps that was Antares' power, to get stronger in battle. With every scar added, he gets stronger? Or else, how would one explain him tripling his strength just after Ryuk's fight? He should have been weak and barely alive from that, but he reappeared before Ryuk. He had gotten his energy wave to be thrice as strong as the previous time. And Ryuk could see, on Antares' hands, they still bore the marks of the Anunnaki's Oblivion skill, and that scar wasn't leaving completely, although it had healed. Now, he was starting to understand. This loud giant before him might actually be a horror of his own. Tell me, Antares, what are you sore about? Me whooping your ass or you losing your weapon? You whooping my ass? I'm even curious, Ryuk. How did you survive that technique of yours? I am 100% sure your feeble body at that time shouldn't have been able to handle that blast. It succeeded in crumbling my axe and gauntlets, but you, of all people, should never have survived that. It should have destroyed your body. How the hell are you still standing? But now in a seemingly different body. Did you change your body? Antares asked, suspicious and cautious. But looking at Ryuk's eyes, which held no emotion and definitely wouldn't answer his question, he could only shrug it off as he refocused on the question he was asked. So you said, am I sore that you whooped my ass? First of all, you didn't whoop my ass. To whoop someone's ass is to beat them to their back and stand above them, looking at them with a condescending gaze that says, "Want to go for one more time? You defeated me, sure, but I was on a knee and you could barely stand. Seems to me like mutual destruction. As for being really hooped in the ass, I've been hooped in the ass by a certain bastard before. Quite badly too. That was how I got into that godforsaken ruin in the first place," Antares said, as Ryuk watched the seething, murderous aura suddenly burst out of Antares as his teeth clenched hard. Oh, seems like he's got a feud with someone. And lost too. I wonder who can beat Antares so damn bad and imprison him in a ruin. Whoever he was, he must have been pretty badass. So yeah, I've been hooped in the ass and I'm sore about it. Everyone who's been hooped is always sore about being hooped. If they aren't, they just haven't been hooped enough. But I am most angry that you destroyed my axe and gauntlets. Can't blame it on you, though. I could have lost my life along with them, too. That I'm at least grateful for. But I need to get weapons crafted soon, or else I feel too weak. It's like having two hands and only one finger working. Infuriating, no. Ryuk looked at his hands and then proceeded to move just one finger. Well, assuming I can only move this finger of both my arms, then it's quite truly infuriating, he thought to himself as he turned to look at Antares. And how do you plan on getting a new set of weapons? He asked. Forging. And I'm the only one that can do it, since I'll have to inscribe my race's own runic lines on the gauntlets and axe, and also have to inscribe my will unto them. It won't take much time, but I will need an excellent forging area and quite a few materials, which I think I have enough of, but I need a good forge, he said as a thought appeared in Ryuk's head. A good forge, huh? You know, I work with an organization that recruits powerful experts to help close interdimensional gates. And these experts love buying these powerful artifacts, weapons, armors ingrained with special ability effects. I'm thinking all of those weapons can't be rewards from closing gates, right? So, there has to be a blacksmithing organization that ships down all these weapons to my organization, and where experts can then buy them. If you get to link up with this organization, I'm sure you should be able to find quite a decent forge room, Ryuk voiced out to him. The Adventurers Guild sells weapons and artifacts. Although Ryuk had never gone to buy one, he didn't think he needed it, as his claws were usually enough to close up the gates. But if Antares needed to craft a weapon, then he could simply find a way to link him up with whichever organization was shipping those artifacts to the Adventurers Guild. That would be perfect. Fine then. You follow me to a place after this, and I may get to introduce you to whoever is the head of that annex. Now please, don't interrupt my cultivation, he said before he crossed his legs, his eyes closing as he settled his breath before he began reviewing the information in his head. Antares no longer interrupted him, as a hopeful look flashed in his eyes before he disappeared, sitting down on a random platform by the far side and closing his eyes, seemingly going into a cultivation of his own. Undersir. It's simple. With the already created nodes in my body, I only need to keep attracting void energy into them and spinning those vortexes to gather up void energy, and then send them to the created void veins, making them thicker and bigger. Once they're hardened to the max, I should be able to break through to the plane of dominion, Ryuk thought, inhaling a deep breath as he rose to his feet, getting into the same roaring beast stance. Then, he inhaled deeply as a burst of Vodi energy quickly gathered around him and began entering his system. Just like the last time, it was as painful as hell, but this time, Ryuk was more than a bit used to the pain, and he was able to resist it silently, albeit with blood dripping down from his body soon enough. But that was easy to ignore, and he continued. 30 hours later. Time's up. The system notification flashed before Ryuk's gaze. Blinking so brightly he was pulled out of his daze. The broken concentration resulted in the void energy drifting off him, and Ryuk collapsed on all fours. A wave of dark, nauseous blood poured out of his mouth, as Ryuk narrowed his eyes at them, looking at the bizarre color of the blood. But he shrugged it off as he rose to his feet. His bones were screaming in pain, as he felt a blazing feeling of energy overfilling every inch of his body, but it wasn't anything he couldn't handle. Done? The voice came from the side, none other than Antares, who currently had his eyebrows furrowed at Ryuk's figure. The young man was from head to toe covered in blood, and it wasn't red blood. It was pitch black, radiating a dark aura of the void. Whatever technique you're using, Ryuk, I think it's too strong for you. Cultivation isn't a death sentence like you make it seem, Antares voiced out, concerned, but Ryuk waved him off. I'm fine, and time's up. We better get going. He completed as a vortex opened before him, revealing a grassy outside world. Ash! He stepped out, followed by Antares, the void rift closing behind them. But the instant he stepped out, Antares' jaw dropped to the ground. Holy fickly! He said out loud as he looked at the mega building before him and watched Ryuk walking towards the gate. You live here? Yes. Wow, this is quite big. The design is out of this world, too. I mean, only those pompous Namora kings like their homes to be like this. You didn't tell me you were a spoiled young master from a stinking rich family, Antares said, as Ryuk laughed out, only to wheeze in pain when he felt the burn in his throat. The Void Azura grimoire required his mouth to be opened up to allow void energy to come in through his throat, and Ryuk had it open for 30 hours straight, leaving it bruised and injured. I wish that were true, he said, entering the house as a void vortex materialized before him. Antares looked up and found Ryuk disappearing and reappearing among the steps upward. I'll be back soon, he said before quickly fading away once more, leaving behind droplets of dark blood that made Antares' eyes furrow. He's essentially killing himself for more power. Why would he do that? He muttered under his breath. The first time he had met Ryuk, he had to face him in battle, and the devil knows that the kid had almost died in his hands. If not for that ultimate technique of his, he would have killed Ryuk back then, or like he planned gravely injured him to the point of making him immobile and using him to quench his loneliness until he was bored with him. The point was that Ryuk should never have come into that ruin for a person of his power level or age. It was suicidal. And now, he was using a technique that drained him of blood with every second. Antares had sat down and watched Ryuk for those 30 hours, watching him remain in pain with the seeping blood, yet biting his lips and continuing. He was killing himself just to cultivate, essentially killing himself to grow stronger, and that's what he could never understand. For one so young, stronger than his age, especially in a wild world too, and possessing this big of a house to house his soul. What more could he want from life, to kill himself just to grow stronger? More money? More power? How interesting! Splash! The sound of water splashing down on the glass-tiled floor echoed through the shower room, where stood none other than Ryuk. His hair clung to the back of his neck as the water hit his shoulders relentlessly, as if it had been waiting all day to fall. It was cold, but it was just as he wanted it, as he felt the hot sensation in his chest and the burning rush in his veins slowly begin to cool. Dark, dried blood on his body rained down, covering the shower space with a nauseating iron-rich scent. But it was soon all drained into the outlet as the perfusion feature was activated, filling the room with an honest, floral aroma that made him feel as if he were walking in a garden. It was a heavenly sensation, the sensation a knight feels after a long battle, and finally, a rest amongst the green grass. Ha! Foggy white breath escaped Ryuk's lips as his eyes slowly opened, sending out sharp streaks of starlight blue that danced across the entire room before settling on the golden panel in front of him. Congratulations on reaching the peak of the ascension stage. I was hoping to reach Dominion, but to craft those runes on the veins, I feel like it would take another 60 hours. It'll be worth it once I find the time to continue, but only after the commemoration. He silently thought as he flicked his finger, causing the shower to stop. One side of the wall slid open, revealing a neatly folded towel. Slightly warm, and Ryuk dried off with it before fully stepping out of the room. The house contained everything and came with everything. Its food, its area of perfume, its watches, and its clothes, mostly official suits capable of aligning with its wearer's form. And it didn't take long before Ryuk appeared before the dressing room. Combing, creaming, getting dressed. It all took just about 30 minutes, and he gave one last look in the mirror before stepping out of the room and taking the stairs down. Step. The sound of footsteps echoed as Ryuk descended toward the lower floor, only for many sounds to echo again as he glanced toward the living room and saw Antares sitting comfortably, a bag of popcorn in hand, while the wall-sized TV flashed with bright images. It was the news, and surprisingly, it had something to do with recently recorded footage of him fighting the Nulls, accompanied by a tip suggesting he could appear at the upcoming Ashfall ceremony, scheduled for the following day. Didn't know you were quite the local hero in town. And by the way, not many seem to know you, yet they address your strength as that of a god. I can imagine you've been keeping quite the low profile, Antares said as he turned his head behind him with a grin, but blinked as he looked at Ryuk. It was like looking at a completely transformed figure compared to his previously half-dead state. For one, he was dressed, not overly formal but far from casual. A long-sleeved, high-collared white shirt, smooth and fitting to his quite masculine frame, with subtle golden lining along the collarbone and wrists. Slim, matte white pants with smooth seams and tailored stitching, shaped like modern dress pants, and sleek grip-soled white shoes that emitted a faint sound when walking. The clothes seemed to have been made from soft tech fabric, simple, but sharp. On his hands, he carried a sleeveless long white coat that seemed to be a matching outer layer, though he wasn't yet wearing it. It collated perfectly and centered him, making him resemble a member of royalty, without donning overly lavish clothing. The refined and charismatic aura was still undeniable. I'm no local hero. I just returned to find my world losing a war, and I decided to join. The hero and all that's propaganda from the media. And maybe, the people's hope for a savior, I think, he replied as Antares shrugged. Well, you could have arrived and just taken a fresh breath and sipped wine, instead of going to war. That alone makes you a hero, whether you like it or not. So, you're dressing up for the Ashfall ceremony, I assume? He asked, and Ryuk nodded. Yes, and I guess quite the eyes will be on me with the news being on TV. He muttered with furrowed brows as Antares rose to his feet. It's fine. I think you'll do good, just with the attire, even if you remain quiet all through. So, we're leaving now? He asked, ready to go, but then watched as Ryuk raised an eyebrow at him. What? I thought that was the place where you'd link me up with the head of the Forge organization. It is, of course, but, you're not wearing a shirt, and your trousers are worn out, dirted with war marks. You look quite brutish, he said as Antares snorted. Brutish? Of course, I'm brutish. I'm a barbarian. Brutishness is in the blood. You keep up your fancy young man style, and I'll keep mine. Ryuk scoffed. My fancy young master style? You think I with these types of clothes? My best attire is a simple white shirt and trousers. Makes it easier to move and end battles quickly. These shoes and suits, they're not me. But I must appear in them. And why? Who would hold you if you didn't wear them? It's not about being held. It's about paying respect. Everyone will be dressed like this officially. It's a commemoration, a day to honor those who died in the war. It's disrespectful for anyone to come in with seemingly no care for their image. Like a prospect who disregards the weight of what is ongoing, Ryuk said as he walked past Antares, heading toward the exit. You have 30 minutes. Take a bath. There are thousands of clothes like mine upstairs. Get into something official, and we'll be on our way. You'll be getting those new gauntlets and an axe in no time. But you won't if you appear like a barbarian in front of a man who runs a multi-billion-star coin company. He said, exiting the living room as Antares' brows furrowed further before he eventually sighed and muttered, anything for a forge. So, which one should I take? The Velocinova hypercar or the Navagainen Urus? Ryuk wondered to himself as he stood before his garage, looking at the two cars. One was a sleek hypercar with 2 doors, and the other a large 4-door SUV. I don't think I've ever seen you drive a car before. And weren't you asked to have permission from your affiliate company before you're allowed to drive any of these cars? The system asked, as Ryuk's eyes shimmered before they settled. Aha, the Velocinova hypercar. It is, he said, as he walked toward the car. He tried to open it up, but there was no knob like he was used to seeing, and that was when it occurred to him. As he lowered his gaze to the handle side, he noticed a flashing neon light that could barely be seen by normal eyes. So it needs some sort of permission or recognition to be accessed. If this car is part of the house feature, which was paid by me with my adventurer's card, then it can only mean one thing, Ryuk said, as his adventure card appeared in his hand from his storage space and he swiped it by the side of the door. Beep. The second he did that, the car made 2 beeping sounds, and Ryuk watched as the door swung upward like the wings of a falcon, slicing through the air with mechanical grace as it reached toward the sky. It looked more like a gesture of art than engineering, and Ryuk inhaled a bit as he slid into the space. When he balanced himself, a beeping sound was made and the car automatically shut itself closed. Beep. Welcome, user Ryuk. First time accessing has been detected. Would you like a quick neural input on the car's starting model and operation? Will take less than 10 seconds. An AI voice resounded, and Ryuk replied, yes, please. The second he said that, a holographic panel appeared, depicting ultra-clear footage of a similar being activated, and Ryuk watched the entire process, flashes of data firing into his eyes. Within 10 seconds, the holograph disappeared and the AI voice resounded again. Activation memory has been successfully implanted. In the next instant, Ryuk's hands and feet moved, his legs resting on one of the 2 pads, one at the center. Lightly pushing it a bit, his hand reached for the button by the side of the steering wheel, and then he softly placed his hand on it, holding it down for about 3 seconds before. Grum. It was a deep growl, mechanical, primal, resonating from deep within. Part snarl, part symphony, as the engine instantly awakened. Ryuk's heartbeat unconsciously quickened within him as the dashboard lit up in a cascade of colors, each light flickering in sequence, casting reflections of red, blue, and white across the car's interior. Taking off his leg from the brake pad, he moved it to the accelerator and then, grum. Ha ha ha. Now this is interesting. Ryuk squealed out as he felt the intense vibration. It was like unleashing a storm. The energy he felt, a symphony, and a sudden rush in his heart that he couldn't quite describe. I can't believe I've been missing out on this all my poor life, he said, but then paused as the car continued its loud hum, and he turned to the house exit to see a man walking out. Oh! The one who came in was quite the burly figure, with long, neatly gelled hair, a smooth, sharp-angled face with piercing crimson eyes, clad in a tight-fitting black suit and bold trousers that accentuated their intensely muscular curves. Standing at such a height, the man exuded an aura of sophistication, yet it was easy to see the power coursing through his body, like a bodyguard forged from steel. His gaze swept across the garage before settling on Ryuk, seated in the strange machine. Now, how does it feel? Be honest, Ryuk asked as Antares walked forward, toward him. His eyes faintly gleamed as he examined himself and then looked to Ryuk. He could only sigh helplessly. Honestly, I think this is a bit better than those tattered jeans and bare-chestedness. I feel beyond, you could say, he said, and Ryuk grinned. Come on, get in, he said, and the second door opened up as Antares walked to the other side, sliding into it before turning to look at Ryuk. And is this some kind of beast that you take around in this world? He asked, as Ryuk nodded and reached for the side. Antares watched him draw a belt over his chest before anchoring it to the side. Wear your seatbelt. Helps in case of an accident, he said, as Antares furrowed his brows and looked up. An accident? What do you mean? He asked as Ryuk shrugged. Nothing much. Just that this is also my first time being in the driver's seat of one of these things, he said, and at the sound of Antares' seatbelt clicking, his hand reached for the steering wheel as he switched a button at the side to regular driving mode. Then, he reached for the hand gear and pushed it forward into the drive position. The AI voice rang out. Safe driving mode has been activated. All sensors will now be activated, and assisted driving features will be uploaded. The speed limit will now be halved for safety reasons. Feel free to start off now, Ryuk, the AI voice said as Ryuk moved his foot off the brake and then to the accelerator. Lightly pressing, the car began to move, and he soon drove out of the garage, quickly approaching the driveway. The entire island already had a road that led through the entire island directly to his gate, and Ryuk simply followed it, getting used to the steering wheel, which was surprisingly easier than he had expected. It moved the instant he felt it should, as if it could read his mind. And soon enough, the Velocinova hypercar began picking up speed until it reached a speed of Mach 50 traveling down the road. Hey, I think there's water ahead. I can hear splashes, Antares said, pointing ahead as they came to the end of the road at a sandy beach. But Ryuk kept driving toward the approaching waves. Just when Antares thought they were about to be drowned to death, the AI voice rang out as Ryuk proceeded to tap one of the buttons in the center console. Initiating amphibious mode, the AI said, and then the car began quickly morphing. Boom! A sudden, immense force exploded outward, not at all affecting Ryuk and Antares inside the car as the vehicle took to the sky, soaring forward toward the approaching waves. While it was mid-air, the car's exterior began to change. The sleek panels folded downward, revealing gill-like vents along the sides. The wheels tucked in and rotated, replaced by turbine-like thrusters. The front of the car narrowed, taking on a sharper, more predatory profile that reminded Ryuk of sharks. The once ground-bound machine had shifted into an amphibious mode, hovering inches above the water's surface before finally. Splash! The Velocinova sliced through the water like a blade. There was no drag, no resistance. Just along the rear, a cool, silent burn of energy propelled the vehicle forward. When Ryuk pressed down on the acceleration pad, his hands gripping the wheel tightly, the vehicle moved forward with even more speed, skimming across the sea like a phantom bullet. In your world, Do you have a beast that can run excellently on water as well as on land? Ryuk asked, turning his gaze to Antares, whose gaze was currently glinting with the spark of amusement and something deeper. No. We barbarians live among the mountains, far from the seas. We don't come across sea creatures much, and we certainly do not tame them enough to ride them across the sea. Antares replied, still awestruck. Ryuk grinned before saying, Then welcome to Endearth. Grum. The air shifted forward with a renewed surge of speed, blasting waves behind it, but Ryuk soon slowed to a soft cruise, leaving the car in assisted auto-drive mode. He brought out his device right after. Dring. The sound of ringing echoed as he looked at the number, then swerved the glowing call button on the screen to the right. Hello, Aster. He greeted first, and the voice came in smoothly. Ryuk. Good to hear your voice. Do you remember the plan? She asked. Yes. I'm currently en route. Good. Where are you now, though? At the main organization base in Grade A, or your penthouse in Grade B? He asked. Grade B, but not in my house. There's another one of our bases that we've set up in Grade B. Come there, and don't worry, I'll send you the location now. Looking forward to seeing you soon, she said before the call ended. About 15 seconds later, Ryuk felt a buzz and looked down as his device blinked to life. The interface card icons lit up across the screen before the AI updated. Sent map location has been confirmed. Accessing. Complete. Recharting map on screen. It declared. Beside the wheel, Ryuk watched as a 2D map quickly appeared, showing a pulsing red dot and a steady green one. The red dot was his current location. The green dot was the direction Aster had sent him. Without hesitation, he accelerated and began moving toward the destination. We don't know who he is. He could be a danger to Endearth, and that's a possibility we cannot ignore. If we allow him amongst a party that includes the most powerful elites of Endearth, then it's like sending a Null King into our midst, except one definitely much stronger. Inside a large hall where a central table stretched over 5 meters long, high-profile individuals dressed in dark official suits sat around the round table. A heated conversation was currently underway. Null King or not, we all saw what he did. We all saw the footage. He faced thousands of Nulls alone and defeated the Null King. We saw his act of support for the Ascension Line warriors before taking off. And according to the Peak Wave Star, he is the one who brought her into our association in the first place. He is Ryuk, Mad White's personal intern, and 40% of all of us here already know him. A pointed-ear woman, likely an elf, projected with conviction. Then, a sharp voice cut through the room. Peak Wave Aster herself cannot be fully trusted. For so long, everyone at this table has doubted her origin. It's obvious she's alien. Her loyalty has no reason to be bound to us, and this might be part of their deeper plot. Another, man with short dark hair, voiced out suspiciously. She can't be trusted? Have you all forgotten the Starweave organization has done much, not only helping the evacuation process of areas susceptible to the Null's endirgement, but also helping Endearth's Eternity Stage experts connect to each other and have access to ongoing, latest information better than any other group on Endearth. They've reduced the casualty rate of the war by 35%, just through the quality of their intelligence alone. And even with all of that, you still think she's untrustworthy? When will she be trusted then? When she dies fighting the Null army? Or when she gives her last breath defending our land? Is that when you'll finally accept that she's on our side? Another family leader asked. A blue-haired man with scales over his face, clearly from the aquatic races. Peak Wave Aster is on our side. There's no doubt about that, came a calm, composed voice. It belonged to the man seated at the head of the table. It was none other than Sir Alexander, Mad White's father and the strongest human on Endearth. We've listened to her words, and we've trusted the intel she's provided. That information has saved entire zones from destruction. The footage of the alien battle clearly shows Ryuk, the one she named as the supreme wave of their organization. We all know she only listens to that kid in the first place. And if we remember who that kid is, we'll remember that when the second null invasion came, he was the one intercepting, dealing with the 3 pseudonulls before they could unleash chaos on the battlefield, and fighting them all on his own. And not only that, when the first null war came and the humans were sent forward as meat shields, he once more had already descended into the fray and fought them all alone, as we later came to learn. That truth can no longer be denied. Ryuk has always been fighting at the front lines. He looks different now with this new form, but his absence, which had been our major suspicion, has been explained by Peak Wave Aster quite satisfactorily too, and as for Ryuk himself, his actions match every record we have of the Ryuk logged in our archives. And if he is the one, then he has every right, not only to be at the commemoration party, but to stand before the world and deliver the speech. After all, he's the one who Endiarthians now look up to as a beacon of hope. But there must be a chance left to consider the possibility of the danger he presents to everyone at the commemoration. Judging by the feats he has demonstrated in that footage, his strength is both comforting and alarming. If he turns against us, especially with so many ruling figures gathered so closely, he could deal very great damage that would be incredibly difficult for Endearth to recover from. As much as we would all love to believe that he's on our side and always will be, it's always important to be prepared for the other scenario, no matter how unlikely or minor it may seem. Therefore, all Eternity Stage experts from each family are to be present at the commemoration. I don't think I even need to say this, since every family lost something to this null invasion and most definitely ought to be there, honorary to its lost warriors. But I understand that the Eternity Stage experts are a bit harder to place under standard control. But this is important enough. If he defeated a Null King with ease, then 2 or 3 Eternity Stage experts wouldn't stop him, as hard as it is for me to say it. But if we have all Eternity Stage experts from each family on board, then he can be quickly subdued should he lose control, and the damage to civilians can be minimized or completely extinguished. The Eternity Stage experts get to pay homage to their fallen for their grace, and also stand by in case of emergencies. It's a win-win, and it relieves the situation with ease. And I'm pretty sure all of your Eternities are already curious and want to see him anyway. But I will be around him during the duration of the event, and only I will be allowed to give the command for him to be attacked, if I notice any abnormality. If any of you attack him out of nowhere, irrespective of the reason you may have, it shall be overruled and dealt with harshly by the Ascension Alliance, Sir Alexander said out loud, his voice calm yet incredibly clear, echoing through the hearing of everyone in the chamber. That is my verdict, and whoever is to give a speech, I will announce it before it happens. My words are the intent of the Ascension Alliance behind me. Is there anyone who has any objections to this ruling? He asked, scanning across the room. Some furrowed in thought, but they were all quiet, a sign of agreement. They didn't need to say more, even though they had their doubts. But they also knew if things went wrong, it wouldn't be on their necks, but the neck of the Ascension Alliance, and it would be their responsibility to take care of whatever damage they incurred. This was good enough. Very well then, let the gates be opened, and the commemoration begin. Grum! One last warm-up, and Ryuk's hands reached for the engine as he switched it off, unfastening his seatbelt before the door opened up to the sky and he stepped out. Same for Antares as the door shut close behind them. The second they were out, the gaze of everyone was upon them. Some of them had their eyes wide in shock as they looked at Ryuk, or more specifically at the horns on him, and immediately brought out their phones, switching between the footage and the man before them in disbelief. Ryuk signaled to Antares after parking, and they both walked side by side amidst the stares and camera flashes. Something Ryuk was clearly unsettled by, although his expression betrayed no emotion, but Antares could tell. He had observed firsthand how Ryuk never enjoyed anything involving the spotlight, from when the news first appeared on TV, and he couldn't stop taunting him with a shoulder nudge. "Better get used to it, hero," he said as Ryuk silently muttered, "Not in a million years." Walking under the watching stares and flashing camera lights, he was more than unsettled. But his gaze finally softened with relief when he saw the group of 3 figures walking toward them. Standing in front and at the center was none other than Asterlaxia, dressed in a color that somewhat surprised Ryuk. While almost everyone around them was wearing black. Ryuk felt like an exception due to his white garments, but when he looked at Aster, he saw her donning a white gown that bizarrely bore so much semblance to his, making both incredibly eye-catching. They arrived before each other as Ryuk offered a polite smile. "Good to see you, Aster. And I have to say, quite a nice gown you have on," he said to her, as she flashed him a smile in return. "I could say the same for you, gentlemen," she said before turning to look at the one who stood just behind Ryuk. Her gaze furrowed briefly, then it widened in surprise. "A barbarian?" she asked under her breath, but loud enough for both Ryuk and Antares to hear, as Antares' eyes lit up in curiosity. The lady was surprisingly able to guess his origin just by seeing him. "Correct. An Astralaxia, meet Antares. A good friend of mine," Ryuk introduced as he watched Aster cross both her gloved arms together in an X shape, while saying, "It's an honor to meet one of the brutish king race." She greeted Antares as he raised both hands and also mirrored the gesture. "The honor is mine." Both nodded in acknowledgement before Aster turned to look at Ryuk. "This way, and I have to say you're quite right on time," she said, as the duo walked onto the top floors of the skyscraper building that was the second base of the Struve organization. It was teeming with staff wearing black and white suits, with a few in other colors, all well-dressed and clearly prepared for the commemoration. As they were led through the elevators, the two guards soon left Aster's side, leaving just Ryuk, Antares, and her alone in the lift as they ascended before walking onto a long balcony. Soon arriving in the blue-colored office as Ryuk and Antares took their seats and Aster hers, before she swiftly brought out some reports papers handing it to Ryuk. "This is like a repeat of the conversation that went through between me and the council before introducing you to them," she said as Ryuk's gaze flicked through the report, his expression tightening in the end. "You exposed my real identity to them? It was the best thing that could be done," Aster replied as Ryuk raised his head from the reports to look at her. "The best thing?" "Yes. When the footage of you engaging the Nulls was released, just like you predicted, Endearth was divided into two groups. A group saying yay, and another group with silence and horror. Can you guess which is which?" she said humorously as Ryuk rolled his eyes. "Of course. I knew those damn leaders would be more alarmed than anything. Who can blame them, though? You soloed what took 4 of theirs to take down, along with multitudes of other Nulls. They had to consider the chance of rebellion. To the civilians and the Ascension Alliance soldiers, you're a savior. To the major powerhouses, you're a walking calamity that can bring ruin to Endearth. They sent an alarm order on an elite forum, requesting others to find your location, but when I said you were the supreme weave of the organization, and that you are Ryuk, I saw them cancel the alarm order, and even allow you in for the commemoration, all without a word. The leaders fear the horned alien that stopped the Null King and its armies, and what people fear they take down or try to. But they know Ryuk from his previous feats in the first 2 Null invasions, and sent him a welcome card. I think being truthful with them was the best thing I could have done. Crafting up new backstories and new lies. It's all a web that can blow up once a partial piece of information is out of place. Not worth the risk, if we're all focused on bringing an end to the Nulls, with the help of the Ascended Alliance too," she explained deeply, as Ryuk faintly closed his eyes, exhaling in a deep breath for a while. Now Morgaine knows for sure, but not just Morgaine. The half-fallen one knows too. And if there's one thing I don't understand, it's that the other major powerhouses definitely should have heard of the half-fallen one placing a death bounty over my head. Yet what did they do? And now they're extending me a welcome? After seeing what I'm capable of? Or after being scared and fearing I'd take them all down? It all seems fake to me. Ryuk thought to himself, remaining in that dark silence for a while before he heard the word. "Ryuk?" it said, as his eyes opened and Ryuk looked Morgaine deep in the eye, before he rose to his feet. "I'm very sorry, Morgaine, but I'll be skipping this commemoration," Ryuk said. A word that shook Aster's heart as she opened her lips to say something, only to close them, then tried to say something once more, but again, closed them. She took a deep inhale, but when she opened her eyes, She found Ryuk's back turning away, moving toward the exit already. "Let's go, Antares," he said, his hand reaching for the knob, only to have a hand grab it before he could. "It's fine. But I know, if you dressed so well, and came all this way and so early, then you must have definitely been looking forward to this event. But you're now leaving all of a sudden. Tell me what changed," she said, as Ryuk looked into her eyes before he mustered a word. "Fake. The intentions are all fake." Those were his words before he slipped his hand off hers and stepped out of the room. Antares followed closely behind. When Ryuk walked 5 more steps, a vortex materialized in front of him, and he stepped into it, followed by Antares, while Aster stood alone on the balcony. Her fingers hovered in the air, as if expecting him to return, but they eventually lowered to the side, as she looked at where they had last stood. Her gaze was split between confusion and apprehension. Ryuk had changed his decision after learning that she had revealed his true name, but she still didn't understand why. Why would he not want his name revealed? Or could there be a different reason? But even now, she had to come up with an excuse for why he would be absent, especially when the footage of his arrival in the Starwave organization had just spread through the internet. When the vortex reopened, Ryuk and Antares stepped out to see the Velocinova right in front of them, seemingly waiting, and in no time, they both got into it before Ryuk resumed driving. A silent 30 minutes passed, as Antares looked disinterestedly out the side window at the edge of the mountain, the billowing waves of the sea crashing by the side. He looked from the sea waves crashing below to Ryuk, who held an expression that got colder and colder the longer the silence stretched. The space around him was beginning to shudder as he started losing control of his aura. It was the clearest sign of anger, and Antares looked away from him back to the sea before he said, "That Astralaxia. She seems very knowledgeable, no?" He said like a question, but Ryuk's attention was focused on the drive, and mostly on the chaotic emotions within. "She is very knowledgeable. She got everything right. My race name, the greetings offered to my race, almost everything. But she got one thing slightly wrong. Just one," he said, finally arresting Ryuk's attention. "Aha!" She said, "What the major powerhouse fears, they take down, or at least try to," he said as Ryuk's brow knitted an inch. "But she was wrong to think. Now that they know you and your background, they no longer want to take you down. I know what it feels like to be in a position of strength. From being a barbarian general of my tribe. I know those pompous Nemora's kings try and act like they know me, try and court friendships with me. All because they know we barbarians are the strongest in the world. But I've seen them, and I've seen through their acts. In truth, they still fear us barbarians, even after we have close relationships with them. The fear didn't diminish at all. What a powerhouse fears and doesn't understand, they try to take down. But it's important to add this. What they understand, and is stronger than them, they still fear, but then they don't try directly to take down. They try to control, and ultimately take down. So, they never stop fearing and trying to take you down?" he asked, as Antares nodded. "In most cases, they never will." "Sounds sad," Ryuk asked, as Antares shrugged it off. "I like to think of it as a price for greater power than most. Everything comes at its price, and power is no exception, nor should it be. You can grow stronger than others if you want, but do prepare for them not trusting you like they used to, or even fearing you, and trying to take you down. Some people are fine with just being on your good side. That's enough to leave them at ease. But some people, especially those intoxicated by the feeling of having absolute power and being unthreatened, unless you wake up every morning and kiss their feet, they're never going to be at peace. And in one way or the other, look out for ways to take you down. I never thought of that reality when I decided to grow stronger," Ryuk muttered beneath his breath, as Antares nodded before a thought flashed in his gaze, and he asked, "What if you knew? What if you knew that if you got too strong, or even surpassed their level, people's trust would start fading and apprehension would start filling them? Would you have stopped halfway, to keep people's trust and not make them fear you? Would you have stopped growing stronger?" he asked, and Ryuk scoffed. "I won't. That gets rid of the regrets, then, he said, as Ryuk heaved a sigh before he continued. Some time ago, I had a skirmish with one of the major powerhouses, and she proposed a bounty on my head. A death bounty with very tempting rewards. Thankfully, it was quickly revealed to me by someone I trust, who asked me to go lie low for some time, which literally means go into hiding. I was planning to, until Aster led me to the ruins of Niagara where I met you, and underwent that test and all. But when she made mention of the fact that a find order has been placed on my head by the major powerhouse, it sounded awfully similar to when I had a death bounty on my head. And that was when it occurred to me that the same people who once sent me a welcome letter never really did anything to stop one of their own from mauling me to death over a dumb skirmish. Even with the feats they say I accomplished in the first and second Null invasions, they never did anything and just let me be hunted down. But now they're sending invitation cards and welcoming me to a commendation party, after I managed to survive not being butchered to death by one of their own. And I'm supposed to go there to that event and stand with people who in the past didn't blink when they saw I was being asked to be killed? I'm supposed to shake hands with those types of people, try and court favor with them, smile to them like a clown so they can see I'm no threat. Ryuk said out loud as Antares grinned. Sounds pathetic. Something that would only be done by a coward who couldn't see approval in himself and needs to go around begging for it, he said, as Ryuk nodded, then paused, his gaze narrowing as he turned to look at Antares and asked, What did you just say? He asked, as Antares stared at him. But noticing that Ryuk's expression seemed more curious than angry, he repeated, I said it sounds pathetic. Something that would only be done by a coward who couldn't see approval in himself and needs to go around begging for it. He repeated, as realization dawned on Ryuk. A coward seeking approval, huh? That sounds oddly familiar, Ryuk said to himself, as he focused on driving. Perhaps that's me in a nutshell. If I remember correctly, I was only interested in the commemoration party because it would be taking place in the Eclipse Citadel and I would be meeting Morgaine. But I could have left to meet her before. But I didn't. Why? Because I was scared of her answer once she learns the truth. And that held me from moving. And now, I decided to go to the commemoration to make it seem like I ran into her? Could it be that silently, all my actions are due to a lack of approval within myself and instead needing Morgaine to give it? I was so scared of going to the Eclipse Citadel, because I was never sure of what she would have said once she learned what I really am. And the fear of denial had paralyzed me and stopped me from moving. And now it's even dictating my choice, with the attempt to go to an event, without really asking myself if I wanted to go there or not, deep in my heart. I'm seeking Morgaine's approval. Like I don't have enough of it in myself. When did I start wanting approval? When did I need someone to say yes or no to me to bring happiness to my life? When did I start getting so afraid of what people will say that I'm paralyzed to even appear before them? When did I start thinking bad things will happen if people say yes or no to me? If Morgaine said yes to me or no to me, does it change the fact that Uncle Bob gave me his own cultivation veins just to allow me to cultivate? Does it change the fact that he was turned to ashes, just so he could protect me from the bird Null that was sent to kill me? Does it change the fact that an army of dragons took their last breath just to make sure that I survived? What have I even become? Am I the Draconis so many people sacrificed their lives for due to their belief, or a kid clouded by an emotion and seeking approval to keep it? I'm starting to fail. I really am. And coming to this event in the first place shows how far I have fallen from the true path I started out with. An hour's drive passed quietly as Antares noticed the journey coming to a smooth, silent rhythm. No rush. Ryuk simply maintained the same speed, his gaze seemingly fixed on the road, yet somehow staring far off distant. In the end, Antares watched him bring out his device. The second Ryuk unlocked it, he opened Tuggle and typed, Largest weapon crafting agency main base on Endearth. Just a few seconds passed before the search revealed itself. Ryuk's expression didn't shift much, but Antares could tell he had found the location he was looking for. He quickly selected it and uploaded the coordinates into the car. The AI voice rang out, New map location has been discovered. Accessing completed. Recharting map on screen. Immediately, the 2D map image on Ryuk's display shifted, revealing a new destination. Without hesitation, Ryuk swerved the wheel fully. The car screeched loudly on the road as it changed lanes and direction, and slamming his leg on the accelerator, it surged forward with incredible speed, the nitro numbers rapidly rising as they blasted through the air like a phantom. "Where are we going?" Antares asked, noticing something subtly but definitely different about Ryuk. A difference as clear as a switch being flipped in the darkness. "We're going to get you that forge," Ryuk said, his foot pressing harder on the accelerator as they rapidly closed in on the location of the Titan Edge Forge organization. "But I thought you needed to meet someone first and get introduced to help us out?" Antares asked, furrowing his brows as he watched Ryuk's focus stay glued to the road. "Not anymore." TCH. Getting stuck here while everyone else is dressed in suits. "Talk about a shitty life," muttered a voice inside a small hut-like outpost nestled between two massive gates. At the top of the gates, the words Titan Edge Forge were etched, declaring it the official entrance to the organization. "You can't blame the boss. He literally paid us 3 times our usual salary just to be here today. We should be grateful instead," a lower and nervous replied. "Yeah, right. As if anyone would willingly come here instead of being among those high-profile elites. It's literally a chance to meet your idols. Only a fool would miss that." Grum. Immediately, their conversation halted as they both turned, hearing the unmistakable roar of an approaching vehicle that got louder and louder by the second. "Shit." Instinctively, they dashed out of the building. The first thing they saw was a white-colored hypercar speeding straight toward the gate. Without wasting time, they began waving at it to slow down. "Hey! The organization is closed for." One of the guards roared before the car reached them. Its window opened up suddenly, and a hand stretched out towards them both, flashing with golden motes of energy. Immediately, "Ack!" gasps escaped both guards as they felt a sudden force wrap around their throats tightly as their hands instantly reached for it. But halfway through, vroom, they were lifted off their feet and slammed into the gates, which burst open violently, rolling them across the floor as the Velik Nova whipped past them and continued deeper into the compound. "Now that is quite an entrance," Antares' voice echoed from the side, his crimson hair flaring wildly as Ryuk swerved the car with practiced speed, screeching into the designated vehicle garage before bringing it to a halt. The door opened, and they stepped out, calmly making their way forward toward the enormous organizational doors about 30 meters away. But before he could reach them, they opened on their own, and 10 men stepped out simultaneously. They were all male, impossibly tall, revealing their Titan identity. Instantly, they raised their hands forward and shouted in unison, "You are trespassing on Titan Edge Forge premises. Stop right there and go down on your knees or we'll be forced to act." One of them, the tallest, bellowed with a voice like a crack of thunder. But Ryuk didn't stop, calmly continuing his stride towards them. "You gave us no choice. Take him down," the leader barked. 9 of the Titans rushed forward. Crackle! The sound of golden lightning danced from the sky, striking their towering figures. Antares watched in awe, currents of energy blasting down on these tall beings as mist covered everywhere. But then, Titans burst out from within the mist. Each was 10 meters tall, raising their enormous palms and slamming them downward toward Ryuk and Antares. Palms from all directions, each large enough to cover them in complete shadow. Ryuk raised his gaze toward the incoming attacks, a crimson gleam flickering in his eyes, and within the next instant, the sound of something slicing through the air rang out sharply. The massive palms stopped just inches above Ryuk's head, then suddenly veered off course as they were all severed, detached entirely in a flash. The limbs separated into 5 pieces each, which then continued into tiny fragments before burst. A crimson blood mist exploded through the air. The severed limbs oozed blood as they disintegrated, scattering across the ground. The remaining Titans stumbled back in shock, eyes widened in horror at their mutilated hands. Ryuk didn't halt. He continued his steps undeterred and within seconds, stood before the leader, who instinctively moved, blinking out of existence. The air flapped Ryuk's cloth widely, as he felt a punch snaked from the side and slammed towards his right ear. Shockwaves undulated forth from the power, as the punch quickly made its way forward towards Ryuk, who didn't seem to be able to dodge in time, nor was even fast enough to make any attempt to. But then, thump, a massive palm appeared, grabbing the punch midair. The leader's eyes widened as he looked past Ryuk's side, and saw the 5-meter-tall crimson-haired man standing behind him, effortlessly catching the strike in his massive hand. Ryuk turned his gaze to the man, his voice calm but firm. "Lead me to your best forge room. TCH. Damn you!" The leader roared back, golden lightning dancing violently around him as he quickly decided to shift into his Titan form. Powerful golden lightning danced, but before it could fall on the man, the space before him distorted, and his eyes widened to their maximum, as he saw a fist smashing towards him, the space around it crumbling into glass fragments toward his face, and then, it connected with such raw force that his entire facial bones collapsed inward, teeth and blood flying out from the slightest contact before the entire fist fully smashed, and then, boom! The leader's body blasted backward at terrifying speed, crashing into the far wall and punching a hole through it, before vanishing into the distance. Not to be seen at all, as if he never existed. May this be the last time I ever ask for things nicely. Impossible! The disbelieving gasp tore through the air as the remaining Titans all turned their attention to their leader, who had been punched so hard. There was nothing but a destroyed wall that revealed the last trace of evidence that he was with them just seconds ago. He was the strongest of them all, having reached the mid-cataclysm stage, yet he had been blown far away by a single punch. And slowly, they watched as Ryuk slowly turned towards them, his left eye having changed to bear a coalescing black hole of lingering crimson and black energy as he turned to the rest of them. "So, which one of you will lead me to your best forge?" he asked, as they all unconsciously took a step back from Ryuk's stare. But then, one of them, having his eyes flashing, pointed to Ryuk, his hand shaking. "Those horns, you're the one who helped win the 6th Null invasion. You're the horned hero," the figure said in shock. But in the next instant, kaboom! A radius of 30 meters around all 9 of them shattered into pieces as they were sent smashing straight into the ground. Their spines bent to the ground as their hands pressed tightly, eyes squeezed shut from the intense pressure. The sound of bones twisting in tense gravity echoed out constantly as Ryuk took a step, appearing before the one who had recognized him. The Titan raised his head up in horror, watching Ryuk's eyes turn into those of a serpent, as the calm yet spine-chilling words rang straight in his ears. "Never describe me with that mundane word of yours. I am no hero. I am Ryuk." His last words loudly thundered, the eardrums of the weakest amongst them bursting into pieces as they collapsed onto the ground, knocked out cold. The pressure soon faded after, as Ryuk's serpentine eyes returned to normal. "Now, for the last time, which one of you will lead me to your best forge?" he asked once more, and it had barely taken seconds when one of them raised her hand. "I will," she said, her Titan form returning back to human, and Ryuk turned to her before saying, "Lead the way." Cillian immediately rose to her feet as she gave a nod to her fellow Titans before walking through the large gates, and the other Titans remained kneeling, mouths agape as they watched Ryuk and Antares walk into the gates, leaving them kneeling outside in confusion. That was when it occurred to them that he never was an attacker. They were the ones who did. And once he got what he wanted, he left. But still, he was an unwelcome intruder, and they quickly brought out their devices as they called up their boss. "There are a total of," Cillian tried to say, but was immediately cut off by Ryuk, whose low voice that sounded more like a growl than words rang out. "I don't want your introduction. I just want you to take us to your best forge," Ryuk said, shutting her up as Cillian inhaled, sweat swirling down the back of her neck before she asked, "Which type of forge do you want exactly? An artifact forge? An armor forge? A weapon forge? I'm just trying to say there are lots of forges, she said, as Antares spoke up. The weapon forge is the one. Good then. The best weapon forge we have is deep underground, close to a lava core. We need to take the elevator, she said as she walked to one of the elevators, and they entered it, as she quickly tapped on a couple of numbers on the keypad before the AI voice rang out. Render location has been observed. Direction: the lava core forge. Scanning for eligibility. Error: 2 amongst the 3 in the elevator do not have the necessary pass. The elevator will cease to move until all 3 have the pass. The AI voice went out as Ryuk's gaze darted ahead, and he placed his hands on the elevator wall. Immediately, the lights in the elevator started turning off and on, as glitching AI voice rang out, but it was soon cut off, the last thing being said. Elevator has been hacked by an unknown power source. All passes have been obtained. Lift to the lava core forge will now begin. The AI voice rang out, and immediately, the elevator began moving as Cillian looked at Ryuk in absolute shock. He hacked into the most secure AI of the entire database with but a touch. Seems like you've got some tricks up your sleeves to override those tiny voices, Antares said as Ryuk replied curtly. I do. The lift continued for about 3 minutes, going downwards with furious speed, even though everything was surprisingly stable and calm enough. Ding! Echoed out as the elevator doors opened, and they arrived in a new area. Ryuk stepped out, eyeing the environment, noting the burning lava-infused ground and incredibly hot temperature. And just when Cillian was about to step out too, she was stopped as Ryuk raised a hand before her. You won't survive the temperature. Go back to your others, he said. Cillian took back her step and was about to leave when Ryuk's voice echoed. Tell anyone who wants to come down and disturb us that if they do, they'll never come back out, he said before stepping forward with Antares as the elevator lifted up into the sky. A second after it did, and Cillian collapsed onto her butt, sweat dripping down her face as she took deep breaths. All through the entire time, all she had felt was suffocating pressure that squeezed the air out of her lungs. Like a blade was balanced on her throat, and one mishap, she would be gone. Just what is happening? It is said that the horned hero will be in the commemoration. How is he here in the Titan Forge? Why has his attitude changed so much from the footage? How is it? Think it will be good enough to craft those weapons of yours? Ryuk asked Antares, as the two watched the various tools around the burning hall, whose center rested a thong and hammer, and Ryuk could feel the end of it linked to a bubbling lava source below. This is just perfect. This lava core is situated right in one of the deepest layers of the world, and it taps into one of the world's largest currents beneath. You couldn't get a better flame to forge a weapon than the flame right below us. And that's why this is perfect. But I can see it. The true essence of this lava is barely used by whoever is using this place. There's no runic circulation lines drawn to better absorb the essence, and they're just purely borrowing the lava instead of the essence within it. It's like using steam to cook instead of borrowing the flames themselves. In such a way, only about 10% of this lava core room is actually used, and the other 90% is just sitting there. If they could absorb even just 30%, they would have been able to craft better weapons. TSK. Dumb idiots, Antares muttered, as Ryuk shrugged. They're not dumb. That's what you get in a wild world. Pretty sure in more years, maybe even centuries, they should understand things better and be able to tap out more power. Things take time and energy to slowly learn and discover, Ryuk said, as Antares nodded with apathy before he instantly got to work. Ryuk watched him move to the huge anvil in the heart of the room, scooping a bit of lava with his bare hands. Immediately, a metal appeared in his hands as he dipped into the lava and quickly began etching bizarre runes on the walls, on the anvil, continuing towards the entire ground. Ryuk noticed the environment getting searing hot the more he continued, but the Titan worked feverishly, and he simply sat at the side, remaining quiet. Silence passed for an hour before he felt Antares' scraping disappear, and he opened his eyes to the sight of the entire area having become a large halo of blazing, furiously roaring fire. All around, standing in it, looking at the runic lines with focused determination in his gaze, and half-naked, was none other than Antares himself, who slowly turned his attention to Ryuk. "You can't happen to actually be a blacksmith, can you? You look like the head of blacksmithing from your expression," Ryuk said, as Antares shrugged his shoulders. "I wouldn't dare to call myself a good blacksmith amongst my tribe. It's dishonorable to the true blacksmiths. But I can say, I'm one of the best apprentices there is," he said, as Ryuk scoffed but nodded in respect. "Quite the humility I'll say you have. Aren't you like the general amongst your race?" Ryuk asked as a couple of metals began appearing in Antares' hands, hammers, tongs, etc., all being placed by the side of the anvil as he shook his head. "You know, Ryuk, to become a blacksmith from my tribe, you need one thing above the rest. Massachusetts. Not just power. You need overwhelming strength gained from mass, which, unfortunately, I didn't have as I was small." "You don't have mass? You're a hulking 5-meter creature. Even bigger than the Titans," Ryuk said, and it was Antares' turn to scoff. "Idiot. I'm the runt of my race. My dad is a hulking 12-meter tall creature, and he barely passed the mass exam. To even inhabit the blacksmithing place, you need at least 15 meters in height alone to be allowed. The blacksmithing general is 25 meters in pure height and a colossal figure. At a height of 5 meters, everyone in my race easily towers above me." "Oh, so you're like the anomaly?" he said as Antares chuckled. "Yes, that's what they call me. I wanted to be a blacksmith. It was every kid's dream. We Etheris barbarians aren't metal lovers. We are blacksmiths. But when the test came, and the requirement was to carry a blacksmith's hammer, my fingers span couldn't even cross the handle of the hammer, even when I tried to use both of my hands to hold it. I failed. And ever since then, I've gone on a different path from all of them. I got myself a place among them eventually. But still, of course, I wanted to be a blacksmith. So I guess I might even hold more knowledge about it than most of them. Just that I lack the perfect form for it," he explained as the sound of a lathe tsh was made, and the heat was unusually unbearable, shooting up a few tens of thousands of degrees. "This will take 7 hours, and I can't afford to have my concentration broken. A mishap and everything goes down to flames, and I only have enough material to go at it once. So whatever you do, keep it down," Antares warned, as Ryuk shrugged, walking off the area as he stood at the edge of the place, looking at the brightly flowing magma beneath him before he jumped down and disappeared. Antares slowly shrugged at it, before his gaze locked back on the metal find, and immediately, his focus sharpened as he got to work. "Time to get back my power. Spiking hot, is it not?" The system notification flashed as Ryuk hovered 3 meters above a sea of brightly burning lava beneath him, his pupils flaring with intensity as he nodded. "Yes, it's really hot, even with my endurance. Anyone at the mid-cataclysm stage would have been lit on fire by just standing this close," Ryuk replied back as he hovered aimlessly around the sea. There was nothing but rock and more lava, and he continued down until he found a place where the lava sea seemed to continue, branching at a side. "A cave, of course. I'm underground," Ryuk muttered as he was about to simply continue and walk past it when a notification flashed. "The cave is not naturally made. It's man-made," the system said as Ryuk finally paused in his footsteps. "It's man-made?" he asked just to be sure, as he looked at the dark cave that was surprisingly black, even though the flaming lava was flowing within and ought to be providing illumination. It was pitch black. "I guess we can check it out a little, then. But nothing should be able to survive down here for so long. Even I would have to get out in a day or I'll most likely catch fire," Ryuk said before he moved toward the cave and lazily floated into it. But the instant he entered into the open cave, its mouth suddenly caved in and it sealed itself shut silently. Bizarre red lines seemingly carved from lava appeared over the surface of the rock before they dissolved into it. Now, the cave no longer exists, as both sides of the rock faded in with the surrounding walls perfectly. The lava stopped flowing. "That's weird." Ryuk's voice rang out through the darkness, surrounded by a dark, putrid aura that completely covered the airspace in the cave around him. It was pitch black, and somehow even the lava, which ought to be red, was black instead, explaining the darkness in the area. But after he had silently floated forward for about an hour, he couldn't help but notice the dark lava, which had previously been flowing restlessly, had suddenly ceased all movement. He turned back, his gaze zooming forward into the distance, and that was when he realized the exit of the cave had been closed. "That's quite the thriller," Ryuk muttered to himself, but his senses flared around him, unfurling for a couple of miles to monitor the surroundings, and he also slowed down his speed, his senses tuned to their maximum. The cave had locked up on him, and the red lava had turned black, along with black mist swirling through the entire area. It was safe to say things weren't looking particularly good. But just after 30 minutes more of floating, he finally reached the exit of the cave, which looked like the door of a tunnel. And when he stepped outside, he was surprised to feel a new, cool breeze blasting onto his face as he looked around, noticing green, red, and blue petals of flowers all around the area. It was a peaceful garden, seemingly without end. But then Ryuk noticed something peculiar. As he raised his gaze, he found a little girl, about 6 years of age, surrounded by tiny golden threads in the air, hanging down helplessly. The girl's eyes were closed, her golden red hair falling over her face, and her body remained tied up by the stream of golden threads. It was like she had climbed up there and gotten herself tied up in the threads. But then Ryuk's brow creased as he looked at the ends of the threads and noticed they somehow dipped into the empty space bizarrely. A couple of suspicions flashed in his mind, and he felt a numbing feeling that something was wrong with the entire area around him. "Huh!" he mused to himself as he looked up again, just in time to notice the little girl caught in the golden threads suddenly struggling frantically, her hand reaching toward her neck as Ryuk watched one of the golden strands squeezing her throat. She trembled to make it stop, flailing terribly. "Help!" Her voice, so heart-throbbing, resounded. It was so soft, so angelic that no man would resist looking at such a beautiful girl getting her life squeezed out by golden threads and not try to help. But Ryuk remained in the same position, his eyes narrowed in suspicion and focus as he looked around the surrounding area more intensely before suddenly scoffing out loud. "Really? This is your best move?" Ryuk asked with a scoff of mockery under his breath. The little girl twisted more, seemingly losing her last breath of life, but Ryuk remained unbothered. Imagine coming out from a cave, thousands of kilometers deep underground, in an area where most would be burned to cinders. And when you stepped into it, it shut behind you, giving you no choice but to continue forward. It has no exit in sight, covered completely in dark aura, with the red lava somehow having become dark, putrid lava. You continue down this cave, and it opens up, just for you to find a beautiful garden with a cool breeze blowing, and right above your head, there's a 6-year-old golden princess seemingly hanging in the air by threads, which look like something she got herself into? And now, she's begging for your help all of a sudden? "Oh, please save me. I am just a golden little princess in a beautiful garden who got herself tied up by threads. Please save me," Ryuk said, imitating the cry of a little girl as he looked up at the golden-haired figure and delivered a good laugh as much as he didn't want to. "Honestly, whoever falls for this illusion of yours must be the world's most celebrated idiot of all time." Ryuk's unimpressed voice rang out, and a tsh resounded through the area. Immediately after, Ryuk floated up, hovering a little from the garden, and he watched as the entire garden shattered into pieces like glass. And in the next instant, everything had changed. Looking around, he found himself standing at the edge of a waterfall. A waterfall, all right, except that it wasn't water falling, but pitch-black magma, rushing down with thunderous force and crashing into the abyss below. And above his head, the view had also changed. The golden threads had been ruled by enormous, thick, crimson-colored chains that tightly wound around the figure of the golden-haired girl, whose body suddenly changed until she became a 2-meter-tall lady with eyes that contained abyssal light and flowing pitch-black hair, along with porcelain-black skin. She had 4 horns, 2 on top of her head, short and pointing to the sky, and another 2 sticking from the sides of her ears, curving outwards in front of her, crimson in color. On her body was a dark dress, old and worn out, barely able to cover her figure. As she turned her pitch-black eyes to Ryuk, her mouth opened wide. But it wasn't a mouth. It was a maw, one that didn't have any holding in its cheeks, along with pitch-black devilish teeth and a long, snaky tongue. "Well, worth the shot," the lady said, cracking Ryuk an evil grin as his unimpressed gaze locked onto her before he turned away and looked at her crimson chains and the waterfall of pitch-black lava beneath him. "Talk of a prison that can't be escaped," Ryuk muttered to himself as a loud scoff blasted in his ears from above him. "I'm not imprisoned here. I'm simply biding my time, for my revenge," she cajoled devilishly as Ryuk turned back to her before he unironically replied, "You won't be getting any revenge if you're trapped here, and you're obviously trapped here. You did your illusion to make me cut open these golden threads, which would have severed you from those red chains. So you obviously want to get out of here, but you can't. These golden chains won't allow you. So you needed a scapegoat to do it for you," he analyzed as the lady's pitch-black eyes settled on his figure, her smile receding. "You're quite smart for a lady boy. Seems like I misjudged you from your appearance." "You did. Badly so, thinking I'd fall for a garden trap. I wonder what's with anyone thinking I'm a hero anyway," Ryuk muttered with an eye roll under his breath, before he turned his attention back to the hanging lady, as he asked in his mind, "Hey system, what is she? Congratulations. Host has come across a special hybridual mutated beast called a Sakutera." "Oh, she's a mutated beast?" he thought as he couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at the lady, who also raised an eyebrow from Ryuk's eyes, noting the flicker in them as if he just realized something. "Yes, a hybrid. But be careful. One of her hybrid races is one known for their evil," the system said as Ryuk nodded his head, giving one last look at the entire view before he turned his back and moved back towards the place from where he had come. "Nice meeting you," he said, and the lady's eyes looked at Ryuk uncaringly, moved out with dumb shock. Most who had come here would at best try to strike up a conversation, ask her what she was, or just cry out, "Monster, monster," before they are eventually overtaken by their own desires. But the ladyboy before her just came in, told her illusion was stupid, and then turned his back and said goodbye. Finally, a mildly interesting individual. "You're leaving?" she shouted from behind, as Ryuk nodded his head without turning back. But he soon paused when he felt the entrance back to the cave suddenly begin shaking loudly, and in the next instant, his eyes flashed as he faded away from where he stood. A split second after he left, a powerful burst of dark lava came rushing out of the cave, slamming outward with powerful momentum. Ryuk's eyes furrowed, looking at the cave entrance, with all the lava rushing out with a momentum rivaling that of an open dam, before he turned back to the lady, noting a dark ring in her eyes. "You can control the dark lava?" he said out loud. But then he looked around the entire area, the entire waterfall that was raining down with lava, and he couldn't help but gulp a bit, something that didn't escape the eyes of the lady. "Seems like you've realized," she said as Ryuk watched the waterfall stop flowing, and all of the lava began moving up, surrounding her figure, as the heat in the room reached spiking hot degrees, while the air became covered in a dark aura that made Ryuk feel the world around him blurring with every second. But he only needed to wrap himself in a cocoon of etheric energy before getting rid of the mind attack. Still, it was seeping in bit by bit. "You don't think you can waltz into my realm, and then turn your back and leave without my permission, right?" she said to Ryuk with a devilish grin, as he corrected. "You mean your prison. And to be fair, I didn't see a mark on the cave entrance that says it belongs to someone, so I can't really be blamed. Now, let's just both pretend this never happened and you stop the gushing lava from the entrance and I turn my back and leave quietly." "You can't leave, playboy. The cave shuts closed once you step in," she said with a smirk, as Ryuk's eyebrows furrowed. "I doubt that. It's just a rock over the surface. I can crack it. You can't. It's been obstructed with a sealing rune. Not just a shut rune. The only way you can leave is having this," she said, and in the next instant, Ryuk watched as a red-colored card, inscribed with bizarre runic lines, appeared before her face. An unsealing card, the system flashed before him. This is the rune card opposite to that on the rock. Place it on the outer rock, and it will open up, she explained as Ryuk flashed her a thankful smile. Seems like that'll save me lots of stress. I'll kindly take it. Just send it down here, Ryuk said from below, as the lady laughed out loud in disbelief and humor before she said, Come closer if you want it. I can't push it any farther than this, she said, as Ryuk's eyebrows furrowed. Well, if you can't, I can, he said as his will instantly moved up with speed, and he willed it toward the card, instantly raising it toward himself. But before it moved even a centimeter, a wall of lava instantly appeared, surrounding the card, and Ryuk felt his will shatter into pieces as he lost control of the card. Seems like you won't let me have it. Just like I guessed, he said, unimpressed, as the lady replied, Actually, I will give this to you. Promise. On just one condition, she said, noting Ryuk looked at her binding chains, and he said, Free you? Yeah, you made that clear when I came here, he replied as she shrugged. What else do you think the condition can be then? I've been trapped down here for 203 years. Of course, I want to be free. 203 years, huh? Don't tell me nobody has come down here in 200 years. It might be secretive, but I doubt the Titans have ever entered this cave, Ryuk said out loud in suspicion as he watched a faint light bloom in the lady's eyes. Oh, there've been a couple of people who have come down here, she said. So, where are they? Right there, she said, turning her head toward a distant wall, and he watched the lava form a hand and move towards the side of the wall, pulling up on an iron knob in the wall, and coming out was a shelf with objects on top that chilled Ryuk's spines. On that shelf were about 5 skulls. Yes, skulls, pitch black as if they'd been burned to death. And from their expressions, he could see the horrifying agony that was still present on their face. How did you like my collection? The lady asked, looking at Ryuk, who eyed the skulls before he turned back to her with furrowed eyebrows. Each of them could have helped you get out, but you burned them to death and stored their skulls. Why? He asked as she scoffed in mockery. They were all useless. They couldn't help me sever the chains. They're all simply too weak to even make a deep enough dent in it. And so, you killed them and kept their skulls as a reward because of them being unable to free you from your bondage? No, I'm not that pathetic. I killed them because they got overtaken by my curse. Your curse? Ryuk asked, and she nodded. Yes, I'm a cursed succubus in the sense that the more time you spend around me, the more you'll start to feel a burning sensation rising through you, especially if you're of the opposite sex. Soon, you'll be unable to hold back your desire, and I'm in chains. You understand? She asked as Ryuk's eyebrows furrowed in concentration. And sadly, the weaker you are, the more quickly you'll be overtaken by the curse. You've been here for almost 10 minutes already. Just wait 30 seconds more, and you should feel it, she said as Ryuk waited silently. After 5 minutes had passed, he turned his head and looked at the lady. Sounds like a dumb lie, but I wasn't expecting truth from a being like you anyway, Ryuk said, unimpressed. But he noticed the shock flashing in her eyes. Impossible. He's not affected by my curse? She asked herself in shock. No matter how strong, any opposite sex that lingers near her will immediately feel the burning sensation coursing through them. They'll be overtaken by desire and start walking toward her like a zombie, and she kills them immediately before they reach her. But now, the ladyboy before her was standing absolutely unfazed, even though he had been here for 15 minutes now. Most of the men who had come here previously couldn't even last 3 minutes before they were instantly ablaze with desire. You're a lady? She suddenly asked, as Ryuk's eyes twitched. Are you blind too? No, I know what I'm saying. There is a succubus curse on me, and it's amplified by this godforsaken card, she said as Ryuk warily looked at the floating card before her. Sounds like an excuse, Ryuk said, disbelieving. It isn't. The bastard who locked me down here made it a test. He chained me down here and then gave me this card, which is the passing code to leave this place. I can't break the chains, so I need to wait for a person to come in here, break my chains, and rescue me. I thought no matter how weak someone is. So far they kept trying and cracking even just an inch to break the chains. Then one day, they should be able to crack it. But then I realized, the pass card isn't as simple as it seems. For one, it has been ingrained with a passive ability amplifier. Every succubus has the aura that attracts the opposite sex of any race, but they can control it to a point where their presence doesn't affect others. That much, if they will. But I noticed when the men come here and try to break the chains, 5 minutes in, they suddenly become mindless, controlled by desire. That was when I discovered that the card is an amplifier. It increases my charm to an unbearable level that they cannot handle, eventually turning them into desire zombies. But a lady has once come here and I noticed a massive difference. She didn't fall for the charm. She tried as much as she could to break the chains. But then the heat back then was unbearable, as I've not been able to completely infuse my aura to control the lava and make it mine. In the end, she died. But that means the charm doesn't work on females. So, if it's not working on you, you must be a female, she said. But when she looked at Ryuk, she saw him yawning. Yeah, right. That's all so true. You don't believe me? She asked in disbelief, as Ryuk raised an eyebrow. And why in hell would I believe a dark succubus who kept the skulls of men as treasure, with 4 horns sticking out of her face, and her gigantic maw even wider than that of a tiger, with a tongue literally like that of a snake, and her hands and feet ending in claws? And to top it all off, she's chained? Hello? You want my trust? Ryuk asked her in disbelief as the lady shrugged her shoulders. Well, will this guarantee your trust then? She asked as Ryuk turned to look at what she was pointing toward. A lava hand pulled out another iron handle from the wall, and Ryuk's eyes narrowed when he looked at the wall platform half lifted down to him, resting just a meter before him. This is the body of the lady that wasn't affected by my curse. As you can see, she was unburnt anyway, nor does she have a scar. She just couldn't get enough oxygen and died, and I was able to preserve her body by placing her in the wall and with the aid of the lava, which I eventually gained control of, she said, as Ryuk focused his gaze on the corpse before him. And true to her words, there were no burn marks or scars on her body. The platform was carried away and kept within the wall as Ryuk's eyes narrowed further, emotions flickering in his eyes. But then, I still don't believe you. Okay, but why? Your story might be a lie. How? Maybe the men know that you'll cause chaos in the world when you're free and decide to fight until their deaths rather than rescue you. But you left the woman for last, and when she saw the fate of the men who had died, she had no choice but to agree and help you, only to succumb to the heat in the end? He said. You make a good point, but can you explain why I didn't burn her body and keep her skull as a treasure like the rest? She asked as Ryuk replied fluidly. Because you've cooked up this scene, waiting for another person to come, and it'll make it easier for them to believe your story, he replied as she laughed out loud in irony. And that sounds believable to your ears? She asked. Well, it definitely sounds more believable than even thinking a succubus like you is a good soul, he said with a helpless shrug, as her eyes flashed. Well, you just said the truth then. It's not that you don't trust my words. It's that you don't trust me, because I have 4 horns sticking out of my head, and my hands and feet end in claws, and my tongue is that of a snake. You hate me because of my looks. Because I'm a succubus? Or maybe because I'm a monster? And now that I'm a succubus, it doesn't matter if I saved a lady's life and killed the people who tried to take advantage of me. I am still a monster, and will always be a monster, no matter what good I do. That's who you are. That's who you all are. Pathetic existences who will judge everything by what they are in name and looks and ignore whatever good they do, no matter how hard they tried. She shot back in anger, as Ryuk's heart thumped hard in his chest from her words. But, of course, I shouldn't be surprised anymore. I've lost hope of being believed or truly seeing without bias, a long time ago anyway. Contrary to what you might think, I understand. The voice echoed out as the succubus raised her head to the sight of Ryuk standing less than a couple of inches before her. It was a perfect chance to attack with her lava, but she didn't feel it was of much use in this situation, for reasons she never knew, nor was she given a chance to think through. But I have a question. When you saw that woman losing oxygen, and you had the card that could rescue her life, when you had the chance to save her life by compromising your own chance of ever escaping, what did you do? Watched her die, because you couldn't afford to be locked in here forever? Or gave her the card, but she somehow died still? Ryuk asked, his eyes locking onto hers. The sight of those flickering blue irises held an emotion like no other for her. It was like that of a judge who stared down from above, with the most pathetic gaze any being can give others, and her hearts were sent into flames. Flames to prove her innocence. I gave her the card, and she took it and left, but minutes later, came back and handed it over. Her words were, I won't be able to reach the end of the tunnel, and you need it more than I do, young girl. She took her last breath while trying her best to sever the chains. She whispered at the end, as he watched her clench her teeth in pain. Believe it or not, that's what happened, she said as Ryuk looked into her eyes, before a grin of mockery spread across his face. Then we both can agree she's very dumb, he asked. But in reply, a hand of bubbling dark lava slammed past where Ryuk stood, as he faded from that spot, reappearing back on the ground. Looking up above, he noticed the space had been scorched into nothing, as her dark eyes, now brimmed with powerful red lightning, turned down to look at him, an uncontrollable fury burning in them. The last thing I will allow is letting you speak down on her name, she said with voice brimming with hate and an incredible murderous intent. But then, she watched as Ryuk's aura once more changed back to its indifference. I guess you're right, then. No reason to defend her so much unless she did something that could earn so much of your respect. I gotta give it to her, though. That's some soul she's got, Ryuk muttered as she paused in confusion. Wait, was all that a test? Yes. If you had smiled back deviously or not been moved, I would instantly pick it up as a lie, and I'd leave immediately. If you can save an innocent soul but will rather watch them die slowly instead, losing their ability to breathe for the sake of your own freedom, then it's better for you to just rot here till death, then. But now, I have the faintest belief that your words might hold some truth to them. Tell me what's your name, and if I could get you out of your chains, why should I? He asked as she scoffed loudly, smirking deviously. You have to get me out. Unless you want to be stuck with me forever. You might not be affected by my curse for some reasons, but you can only get out with the unsealing card, which is my property, and which I will only give out if you get me off these chains. So, you think I won't be able to get that card of yours unless I get you out of your chains, huh? Ryuk asked with drooping eyes, as she smiled confidently, her dark lava burbling in the air. In the next instant, boom! The ground Ryuk stood on instantly gave way as her pitch-dark gaze turned to the wall at their side, only to find it had been blasted into pieces. And immediately, she concentrated on her lava, letting it all surround her and then, erupting in all directions. Boom! The surface of the lava rippled intensely, fists bursting through it. Her irises flared brightly, watched Ryuk appear in front of her. But immediately, various weapons made of dark lava launched toward him with insane speed, preparing to impale him. Activate Sovereign Rewriting, Ryuk ordered as golden dots of light appeared around his body. And in that second, each weapon she had formed from the lava instantly began losing its form when it reached one of the golden dots of light that surrounded Ryuk's figure. She jolted from the realization but was unrelenting, forming more and more weapons, but each failing as Ryuk continued forward, before she changed, going from offense to defense by forming a thick defense wall of lava around her. But it didn't last a second before a punch blasted a hole through it, and appearing in the next instant mere inches before her, was a punch whose force blew her air erratically around her, but it hovered over her widened eye before it turned into a finger and then, boop! He bopped her nose, and what followed the next seconds was weapons of lava instantly slamming toward Ryuk, who faded from where he stood, appearing beside her other side. She turned her head, and once more, boop! She got booped unceremoniously as her lava formed the shape of two hands that collapsed onto him from both sides, trying to get him crushed. But then, his hand reached out by his side, covered in golden motes of light, and then he pushed towards both approaching hands. Boom! She watched as a gigantic hole instantly tore through the lava that she had created. They slammed together but didn't meet Ryuk, who stretched out his finger once more and then, boop! He bopped her once more. It continued up until the 24th boop, before she finally gave up as she tried to throw the lava, but they wafted them away, barely able to move up to reach Ryuk. First reason why? Because she was clearly exhausted. Intense sweat was dripping down her entire form as she roughly took breaths in. And second, because changing the bonds of the lava multiple times to prevent them from affecting him was also weakening her control over them, rendering them harder to control. And just so you know, those finger boops of mine could have been a mountain-shattering punch to your face. And I made a total of 24 boops, which equals 24 punches. So, you still think this is some sort of deal? That I need to get rid of your chains to obtain that card of yours and not just seize it from you directly? Tsh, if I wasn't bonded to these chains, I would have ripped you apart faster than you could even blink, she said through clenched teeth as Ryuk stared into her dark eye before he shrugged. I guess that's a factor I should consider. Freeing you could lead to me getting ripped apart. I don't think that helps your case, though. Ha! For a person over 200 years old, you seem a bit slow up there. I wouldn't have said that if I were you, Ryuk said, chuckling mockingly to himself as she bit her lip when she realized. She let her anger get the better of her. So, like I asked, what's your name, and give me a reason to free you if I could? He asked once more, eyes narrowing as her dark eye glimmered with suspicion. Why? Why do you even care? You could have punched my face in like you said and grabbed the card. Why bother with the questions? Hey, you want to get out of here or not? Ryuk asked, irritated by her constant dodging, as her dark eye gleamed in disbelief. She has already lost all hope of ever getting out. She doesn't believe it's possible anymore. The system notification flashed, seeing behind her actions as Ryuk's eyes flicked toward it. But then the words soon rang out. My name? I have many names people address me as. The most common is Monster. So I guess that's it. And a reason to get me out of here? Because I need to get revenge on the bastard who placed me here in the first place, she said, baring her monstrous fangs, as Ryuk raised an eyebrow. Really? Not gonna check up on your family and see if they're okay? Or a friend you might know? Family? What's that? She asked, confused as her black eye blinked toward Ryuk, who blinked back in confusion. And friends? Ha 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 ha. Let me ask you, will you be friends with something like this? Will you be fine with something like this being close to you, behind your back or beside you? She asked as she looked at herself. And when he looked at her truly monstrous form, he couldn't help but agree. She made a point. If anyone in their right mind and senses sees someone like this, they would instantly go for the kill. And they can't be blamed. Everything about her reeks of evil and nothing of good. So, no going to meet your family or friends. Just straight into revenge immediately after you get out. Huh? He asked as she grinned deviously. Yes. What, you scared now? I'm scared for you. Huh? You've been trapped here for 200 years. And whoever tied you up here definitely hasn't been idle around all this time. He's obviously growing stronger with every year. I doubt you'll be his match anymore. Meaning you'll just end up imprisoned once more. Of course, I won't go face him first, playboy. It'll take some time, training, and trying to find him. But I'll find that bastard one day, and I'll cleave him into pieces and use his skull to make a crown for myself, she said with ferocity, and it somehow reminded Ryuk of Antares. He had also seen how furious Antares was when he spoke of the person who gave him a good whopping and robbed him with the runes. That was the new question that popped into his head. Who is this person imprisoning powerful Eternity Stage experts? Just what's his aim, and why did he keep them locked up on Endearth, each of them seemingly in some sort of test? He couldn't help but wonder with eyebrows furrowed. But whoever it is, they seem to be helping me somehow. I've gotten Antares to my side, And his strength is something that is helpful, even more so once he forges his weapons. And I can sense it. These chains of hers are not just holding her, they're also restricting her strength. Just the lava that had been contaminated by her aura should be enough to take down Cataclysm stage experts. There's no doubt about it. She's at least at the Eternity stages, or possibly even higher. I'll free you, but we'll have to make a deal so I'm not harmed once you're out of your chains. Ryuk's voice echoed out as he levitated back into the air, standing a meter before her. You will have to sign this, he said, as a paper appeared in his hands, and he unfurled it before her. And, I've seen this before. What's it called again? A contract book or something? She asked. It's a contract grimoire. I guess you know how it works if you know the name, right? Two people come together, make a term of contract, and sign their aura onto it, and the book disappears. Whoever breaks their word will be punished or something. I've always thought it was insane since I heard there's always a way to break the contract, she said, as Ryuk shrugged. There is a way to break the contract, all right? But it ain't easy, and you'll be better off just focusing on fulfilling the terms instead. He replied as she stared suspiciously at him before asking, And what are your terms? She asked, and Ryuk replied, Simple. For as long as you remain on Endearth, you will listen to my command, and you cannot break them. She scoffed in anger. So if you ask me to open my legs up, I will have no choice but to do that and have your way? In your dreams, she spat out as Ryuk's eyebrows quivered, looking at her. You said it yourself. If no one will be your friend because you look like a demon, why would anyone want you to open your legs? He asked, confused, as she smirked mockingly. You men are all hypocritical bastards. Once your desires run amok, you wouldn't care about anything else but quelling them. Even in here, chained up in chains, I've seen fools who called me a monster at first lose their minds. You think they cared if I truly was a monster before they extended their lecherous hands toward me? She asked, as Ryuk nodded his head. She made a point. How about we create exceptions then? Like, except me ordering you to open your legs? How's that with you? Why would a succubus care about having her legs opened anyway? Isn't that what people are afraid of, her wringing them dry?